And welcome in. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Mount Rushmore Mondays. I am your host, Mr. Nick Teodoro, where every Monday or every other Monday, or as often as I can, myself and a partner of my choosing will join a host of my choosing to count down our top four, our Mount Rushmore Mondays of pro wrestling. Last couple of weeks, we did tag teams with my lovely tag team partner and wife, Miss Nicole, joining me. We had Josh joining me a few weeks back. So this week, we are doing Mount Rushmore greatest WWE managers. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mount Rushmore Monday.
Who's your hero? Who's your king? Who's the one that makes you swing? Four faces carved in stone, the legends that we all own. Power slams and flying knees. Who brings the crowd down to its knees? Mount Rushmore Mondays. Who's your top four? Legends at the ring, leave you wanting more. Mount Rushmore Mondays, standing tall, the greatest of all time. They've answered the call. The rope shake.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back in. So, as I mentioned, this week we are doing greatest WWE or WWF managers. So, for my co-host, I had to bring in someone who knows how to manage people. On his show, he's known as El Jefe, the boss. Let's bring him in. In New Jersey, the boss means something different, but regardless. Mikey!
Oh, hello
What's
there.
up, buddy?
Not much, again, I'm enjoying this rainy weather that we're currently got going on over here on the West Coast, so can't complain.
Yeah, well, listen, rain's better than the snow that we've had, so I don't want to hear any of your shit.
Yep. No, but I'm really excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, it's going to be a blast. We already got the chat buzzing. Lisa's in the chat. Hey, Lisa. Nikki, my co-host from last week and Fridays at 6. Yeah, you get to be in the chat. No trolling. I know they're going back and forth. Unbelievable. Steven Homegrown. Don't get started already. They're already starting with this. But yes, the idea is, Mikey, Mount Rushmore, greatest WWE managers. WWF. Unbelievable. So, before we get started, any overall thoughts on your selection process or anything in general about what your logic was in selecting your four?
Yeah, I could definitely tell you. So, managers now in the modern era of professional wrestling seem to be I don't want to say a bygone artifact of professional wrestling, because we still do have managers in some capacity across a bunch of promotions here that we watch and cover between our two, collectives. But they don't have, but I feel like we've kind of gone away from the managerial role being like its own entity and its own character set and apart from the actual wrestlers themselves. And so, so this one was really hard for me in the sense because I had to dig back through the crates of professional wrestling history. Now, granted, I am a person of a certain age and I did not grow up in the heyday of for all intents and purposes, like the Gong Show equivalent of.
So I'm glad you said characters. That. I just want to stop you there for 1 second. I'm glad you said that because I thought that too. Like, you and I are close in age, and I felt like the same thing. That, like, we didn't get that age of, like, we got the end of, like, the manager era. Like, there was, like, a brief moment, but, like, I never, like, it was kind of tough doing this list because, especially for WWE, like, I was just like, there was people, but I never felt like through and through, like, we got, like, the years beforehand, like the 80s, like it was just so dominant and prevalent where like valets and managers were so important. So yeah, there's again, there's so many different layers that, like, to me, I picked it off of, again, just gut feeling of like what my memories were of who elevated people, who I thought of when I thought of like leading factions or whatever it
Right.
was that wasn't in a match. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. So Mikey, what we'll do here is I always let, as my guest, I will let you start with your list and your first selection, and then I'll try and throw them up in the chat on the poll as we go. And everyone, feel free to chime in as you're going. Yes, I'm assuming WWF. Yes, like anything WWF. Too many W's, but you get the point. I can't get that out fast enough. But yeah, so it's gonna be a fun one. And then when we're done, yeah, we'll open up the phone lines and hear from all you. So we'll go from there. Mikey, first
Sweet.
up for you, sir.
So, shout out to everybody at the chat too, because I already saw some conversation. So now, minus his attachment to a certain person who is no longer here and was not, and we could just say for all intents and purposes, was not the best person on the planet. I still think that the work holds up, and please be nice to me in the comments. But the first one that I picked, I have aptly given him the moniker of the Megaphone Maestro, and that would be Jimmy Hart. So again, and I'm going to put this blanket statement out for all 4 of my picks. Now, with one exception to one of my picks, I am a person of a certain age. I did not grow up with all these characters, but I took it from the approach of kind of like a historical mindset, if you will. And dug into the archives to learn about, and this is always the names too. And shout out to my other co-host, Evan, who is a historian when it comes to professional wrestling. So I appreciate his input in helping me put this list together too. But the reason that Jimmy Hart is one of my picks for managers is for a couple different reasons. Now, again, because of the way my mind works, presentation matters when it comes to memorable characters, whether they be wrestlers or, in this case, managers. And one of the things, as silly as it is to say, the reason that I'll pick Jimmy Hart is because that megaphone is iconic. Like the megaphone is associated with
really is.
Jimmy Hart, and it honestly, every time he's with the megaphone, it makes Jimmy instantly recognizable. And so you cannot think of the megaphone without Jimmy Hart, especially in the WWE days of everything, right? But I think what's super important too for Jimmy and
He
why
did
he's
more
such
for
a
the
good manager.
megaphone than anybody in sales.
Yeah.
Like anyone in that company could have ever dreamed.
And that's what I'm saying. Presentation matters because, presentation also leads to products to buy, and products to buy equals monies for companies. So
Lisa's saying she agrees with you, and she kind of forgot about Jimmy Hart. I thought, again, like there's so many, because the thing with Jimmy Hart is that, like, and I was telling you about this before we started, like, you just forgot, like, how many people he managed. He was around everybody, like the Natural Disasters, Greg the Hammer Valentine. Obviously, I know Reese, because I thought about that first, because I was like, yeah, the whole Hulk Hogan. And like, I feel like the last 10, 15 years, he's recognized more because of the Hogan thing. But like, to be honest, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, he was around everybody. And like, he was just like,
yeah.
Did he manage Sid? No, he didn't manage Sid too, did he?
I don't think so, but you're talking about he was been around a lot of people, and that's kind of the second reason why I picked him too, is because he was managing so many different people that made Jimmy very adaptable. He could come off as like the hype person and the good, when he was managing faces, and then he could become more slimy when he was, managing more heelish characters and things like that. And I think that adaptability, in my personal opinion, is what gives you longevity, and which is something that Jimmy ended up doing. He had a long career as a managerial character.
Yeah, like, I mean, he did have like a handful of matches along the way, but like, yeah, like I feel like he was a guy who was just literally never a wrestler and like just played into that character so well. Yeah,
He really
it seems like the chat is pretty much in agreement with you here. Let's see what the polls got. Polls got 100% that he should be on the Mount Rushmore for WWE managers, but we'll see. My next one, my first one is going to be probably controversial because it was 80-20 actually. It ended up being, but so for my first, I got to throw out a wrestler turn manager turn wrestler manager, like, but literally for the better part of I would argue that the 90s, like when we grew up, Mikey, Ted DiBiase elevated so many people by association.
For reals.
And the first thing I think of is, and just again, my Jersey bias, but like Bam Bam Bigelow got to the main event of WrestleMania. Again, say what you will, Lawrence Taylor and the crossover and everything else, but
right.
Ted DiBiase was front and center of that and part of that storyline. Like everybody that he was around, he always elevated. The whole $1 Million Corporation, everyone there were kind of feigning, and he kept them relevant. Tatanka, no one knew what to do with Tatanka after that losing streak, that winning streak rather ended. So to me, Ted DiBiase is one of those very underrated, because everyone knew what he did as a wrestler and how great he was as a wrestler, and especially in the territories before that. But just super underrated as a manager and what he could do to put over people. And again, the Undertaker, he introduced the Undertaker, not that he stuck with the Undertaker, but he introduced the Undertaker to our audience. Like, he was someone that the WWE, WWF trusted as a mouthpiece for wrestlers.
No, and even though he's not doing too much of that now too, like like what you said too, is that there was a lot of trust put into Ted DiBiase in terms of like being a managerial person, or even just somebody who is more like the managerial slash, point of contact person. And the reason I say that is because even though it was a couple years ago, you saw Ted DiBiase kind of be in that weird managerial slash, point of contact person over in NXT, which is probably one of the weirdest feuds, but it ended up working because of everyone involved. You had Cameron Grimes and LA Knight feuding for the $1 Million belt, which became a whole entire thing. But you had Ted DiBiase kind of like being the point person for LA Knight, which was kind of crazy. So
the ringmaster, how do I forget? Like, literally the ringmaster Stone Cold. Like they introduced people with him, and that's just what made him so intriguing as a character and as a manager. Reese said he'd rather forget that gimmick.
That is very fair.
I know this one could be controversial as of whether or not he can make it on the list or not, but the chat seems relatively great. 67% to 33%. So again, just an interesting first one to kind of start off with fake Undertaker. Yeah, he also introduced fake Undertaker. Was that Crush, or is that the it was Crush, right? Brian. I almost said Brian Adams, but that's the singer, right? It's and I always make that mistake. It was Brian Adams. So is there a singer and a wrestler, Brian Adams? Now I feel like who's all right.
Just gotta get the graphic. The more you know.
I know. Seriously, I'm gonna get so derailed on that. I'm pretty sure there's Nikki's gonna figure it out. But if Reset is Brian Adams, then I think I got the name right. So there is two. Wow. Yes. And Ted DiBiase introduced us to both of them. Both Brian Adams, the wrestler, and the music. The more you know. Anyway, Mikey, I move on. I digress. Who is your number 2? Or who are you going with next?
So, if I remember my own order I gave you before we went live, But it's okay because we're here and this is a vibe. So the second person I put on my Mount Rushmore of managerial, individuals would have to be the brain who weaponized wit, Bobby the Brain Heenan. Ooh, look at
Yeah,
that
how
picture.
do you not?
I love this
This
picture.
I know it's very appropriate for you.
Be like, I mean, you're not wrong. Anyways, no, but I think Bobby Heenan is super important, and I know when I talk to the rest of my crew, that's the name when it comes to managers that always gets brought up a lot in terms of, people
Mm,
who've kind of solidified themselves as the top managers in the business. And I mean, when you kind of look over his resume and kind of what he brought to the world of professional wrestling, you kind of have to agree to some extent. I think what Bobby Heenan did for the business is that something that I personally love is that while comedic, his comedy was very razor sharp. And so
mm,
you can laugh at the things he said, but there was a undertone of still him like that villainy that you laugh at what he said, but then you're like, oh, wait, there's a reason I don't like you because you're the bad guy. Oof.
mm.
And I think being a manager, you also have to be very eloquent with your words, especially when it comes to if you are, managing a heel character. One of the things I really loved is he was the master of deflection in the
Oh,
sense where, hey, this person did this. No, he didn't. I was just like, what are you talking about? Even if his client cheated, he
yeah.
didn't made it sound like a public service. Like he did this because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like,
I
gosh
can't
darn it.
believe Marty Jannetty ran through that glass window to escape Shawn Michaels.
Like, how
What a
dare he? That was crazy. But I think the most important thing too that Bobby did, which I think is important, and I'm also going to bring up again for a couple of for the rest of my picks, is that Bobby elevated everyone he came into contact with. From the Giants to the technicians, he made all these individuals feel like grand characters and grand champions and worlds, like
mm.
eating giants beater, like world beaters, if you will. So
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, yeah, like I mean, he could be on the just an announcing the Mount Rushmore because of how his timing. Yeah, and it reminds me a lot of like the writing of like Modern Family. If you watch like something like that show at all, like it's very. It seems like it's like I feel like sometimes the writers are like Bobby Heenan reincarnated with some of like the like just the quickness and like the way that things play out in that show. But yeah, he literally. I mean, yeah. Here's Rick Rude, and Rick Rude, you could argue was maybe like fourth, fifth best talent on his roster in terms of like abilities, like Andre the Giant, Ric Flair. I remember like again, not the best name, like they brought in Lex Luger and they associated Luger immediately with him. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig with him. Like
right.
everyone that he was with, yeah, the way that I think you put it great, like the way that he was able to just define them as a world beater.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just you would have to go to great lengths to beat any of his associates, and the way that he like it was just so off the cuff the way that he could make excuses for
Hmm.
everything when his wrestlers were losing, and that I think is one of the biggest tells you could ever do because you're never going to be winning all the time, right? Like you talk about this with like guys like Gunther, like when he doesn't have the belt, what's going to happen with them, and you have to
Hmm.
talk into your matches when you're not competing for a belt, and like that's the definition of what a manager should do. He talked you into so many different matches just because by association he was there. Yeah, to me, and again, he's not necessarily on mine because we may go back and forth on some difference. But yeah, Bobby Heenan 100% would be on my Mount Rushmore. So I think we're in agreement there. I did a slightly different list just for argument's sake here, but let's see. Let's see what the chat's got. The chat is 100% in agreement that Bobby should be on the Mount Rushmore. I know.
Hmm.
Temple said Heenan. Big small for. Reese, good point. Yeah, Heenan family never got stale. Good point. The weasel suit, Nikki. He would do anything to get.
Love the weasel suit. Will you stop?
Oh, I know. I mean, just like I think there's something to be said about the fact that just like, and AEW tries to do this sometimes with like Don Callis and a few others, like putting him on commentary through almost every match. It just helps. Like not like at least with the matches where his clients are there, it just helps them. Like it furthered along how important he was and how important his wrestlers were.
Right.
But I digress. All right, this next one, I know Nikki's gonna give me a bunch of crap for because she's gonna be like, "Oh, I told you to put this on the list," but when I went back and forth and we did our production, because Mikey, you attend production meetings, unlike some people. But
listen, I am playing Switzerland. I am neutral, total neutrality. Like,
but regardless, for this one, when I went back and forth and I said, definitely like 3-4 like hinge Mount Rushmore people. This was one that I could debate either way, like should be on, off. And to me, and the way I'm introducing this is probably gonna be terrible. But people always talk about Miss Elizabeth and how she should be on this Mount Rushmore. Spoiler alert, she's not on mine. And I'm saying that strictly because she was only really with Macho Man, and I just feel like there's more to be said for a manager who could be with different people and elevate multiple people. So to me, the person who was in that storyline who elevated somebody was Sherry. So to me, sensational Sherry. And then later on in her career, working with Shawn Michaels, which again, a lot of the analysts and backstage people have said that HBK made that transition to a single star with a lot of help from Sherry. So to me, again, as a heel manager, she just got in your head, got over it. She a little bit of the elements of like kind of like the craziness, like the crazy psycho bitch that like Luna Vuitton like did later on, more so, but she was very strategic and manipulative in what she did. So to me, again, Sherry deserves a spot on Mount Rushmore.
Oh, 100%. And, I had Miss Elizabeth and Sherry as my honorable mentions too, but yeah, Sherry was fantastic. Sherry is really, really good. And I think the important thing here too is that again, we're talking about our list, but looking at it now too, it's just like I feel like Sherry is the blueprint of what people should be striving to study especially when it comes to having, because okay, so for example, right? So going back to NXT Black and Gold, right? When you had Zelina, who was the quote unquote manager for Andrade, right?
Right.
I thought she was pretty good, but I feel that the problem that we have right now is that anytime you have a female manager, it's always a fine line between manager and valet. But I feel like people need to, especially the women who are going to be the managerial characters, I feel like need to study the blueprint of Sherry of how to still be able to get the point across, but also be something more than just be like, oh, you're speaking for this individual, but you're also kind of the valet for this individual as well. I think Selena has kind of came close to that. But then once Andrade went to main roster, we kind of lost her in the shuffle, and then she became a wrestler. Or, well, she's always been a wrestler, but she started to wrestle more, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like, yeah, like she had that early on and didn't wrestle as much. But yeah, just we talk about just elevating people. Reese saying DiBiase, Savage, HBK, Tatanka, Ric Flair, the Harlem Heat. And the last one was turning. Yeah, Harlem Heat, obviously WCW, but yeah, for a week. But I digress. Mikey, who's your third?
So this one, as the person who really is into gothic horror and just gothic horror movies and stuff like that. Like anytime people ask when it comes to who's my favorite, I'm a weirdo. My favorite director of all time is Guillermo del Toro, and some of my favorite movies include, the movies he has directed and made: The Shape of Water, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, and then of course most recently this iteration that he did for Frankenstein. I love Guillermo del Toro and the gothic aesthetic and the gothic horror. And that's why I have decided that for my third pick, I have to go with the gothic conductor himself, Mr. Paul Bearer, which, yep, there's our boy. May he rest in power.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. And honestly, I feel that that's part of the reason why I also picked him for this list too, is because when I talk about how this is a character, and honestly, this over the top campiness when it comes to these being a managerial character is super important. And the way that Paul Bearer talked, having that vocal identity, it becomes iconic, and it's something that people can hear every time. Even looking at a picture of here, I can hear him speaking in my head. Not actually though, because then that's a whole other set of things we would need to talk about. But I think go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Good.
Well, and I think the one thing that I think Paul Bearer did, not only as a good manager, kind of, being with Undertaker for Lord knows how long, forever, it seems, while they were there. There's a visual storytelling that I think Paul Bearer also brought into this era of professional wrestling, which I feel like not a lot of people were doing at the time. Because, yes, that urn was everywhere that Paul Bearer and the Undertaker went. But the fact that we actually have a whole entire lore around this prop because of this weird world building that Paul Bearer and Undertaker created, I feel like is some of the most iconic stuff. And honestly, I don't think anyone can do the mysticism and the gothic correct now because we don't have these over the top characters to build that lore. But I think one of the biggest reasons I think Paul Bearer was a good manager is that loyalty to Undertaker. He never broke the mysticism and the spell of what Undertaker was going for. Both of them, kept he stayed in the gimmick forever. And so
tell Regis Builder.
It really is. But yeah, Paul Bearer has a little soft spot in my heart because of how over the top and campy he was, but he's iconic, and he's very instantly recognizable too. And even though he mostly was around, Undertaker and the Brothers of Destruction, if you will, sometimes it's all you need because he has been able to do a lot in his career too. So I love it. Paul Bearer, may you rest in peace. I love you. You are so good. And yeah, that is my third pick for my Mount Rushmore of managers, Mr. Paul Bearer.
And you make a great point. Andrew's talking about the story of King was a great build up from him. Yeah, he did a lot of that storytelling. And we're talking about your actual Mount. Yeah, he definitely, to me, you could argue first ballot or fringe for me because of the fact that by my criteria, elevating people beyond just one wrestler, superstar, right? Because he was with the Undertaker for so long, but then you talk about Kane and Mankind, right? Foley, he helped that character get over, and then helping Kane get over. So and all three essentially became main eventers because of what Paul Bearer was able to do. So to me, that's the definition of what a manager should do, whatever. So yeah, to me, it's a great choice on that front. Let's see what the chat's got. A little bit, well, the majority says yes, but there is a few people that are saying no. Steven saying Paul Bearer helped make Taker a top earner. Yeah, I see what he did there.
Listen, I love me a good pun, and that was very punny.
Unfortunately, I don't have the all the sound effects on this soundboard here, Steven. So you
It's
got
all
the
good.
yeah.
Shout out to the
Eventually,
chat because apparently they also like that I like Guillermo del Toro. Listen, I am just a creative nerd, okay? Yes, I talk about professional wrestling, but in my spare time, I read a lot of comics and anime and manga, and I consume a lot of artistic stuff. So, yeah, I mean, and it translates to professional wrestling. That's why I resonate with some of these characters that we see in the past and present too, is because I gravitate towards those kinds of things.
that's fair. Love it. Another reason why we all love you, Mikey.
No.
So for my third, this one's going to be interesting because it same era, 90s attitude era, and I guess a little bit of the new generation era too, and 80s. But to me, when we're talking about managers elevating people, how do you not talk? He's controversial. Jim Cornette.
Not the
And
cornet.
I gotta say, again, you talk about the tag team division and how he was whatever version of the Midnight Express he was managing. He was always around. Then he brings in Vader. Vader, for what it's well, actually, sorry, before Vader. How do I not talk about the? I shouldn't call the elephant in the room. That would have been a bad analogy. But Yokozuna, right? In tandem with Mr. Fuji, I think he was a big part of helping to get that character over
Right.
and make Yokozuna main eventer, then the Yokozuna Hart tag team that he was involved with, and then later with Vader and introducing Vader, which, say what you will, I think backstage politics were a big part of it. But to me, Jim Cornette did a lot to get over a lot of the talent, and he could have done so much more. I think if he just had more time in WWE.
Yeah, Cornette's a very interesting study. Now, focusing on just the managerial part, I think I have to agree with you too. I think Cornette was also really good at getting people over, especially when you think about small little things too, like not to do your job, but but like Reese saying that getting Davy Boy to just be the British Bulldog and dropping his name definitely helped Davy Boy in the long run, which is very, very true.
Yeah. I get well, again, those little creative ticks, like maybe like, and people talk about like we did Philipper's part with like Scott Hall and like the creative mind, like some of the things, those little things behind the scenes that they do that just
Mhm.
say like, hey, well, and this one's not really behind the scenes, but like about how to get somebody over.
Right.
But yeah, I know HBK is a
I mean, you're not wrong.
yeah, like I just think that again, he's the type of guy that when you talk about elevating talent and being able to push somebody beyond what they're at because they're maybe great in the ring, but just shit on the mic or mid on the mic, and that's got to get somebody interested in watching them and watching their
Mhm.
matches. So he kept the mid card especially really interesting for a long time. Yeah, Reese, I was saying like yeah, managing Owen and Yokozuna as a tag team champions, like everything
Mhm.
he did a lot to help a lot of people, especially in the
Oh,
upper mid to
100%.
upper mid. But I don't know. Again, I know the Mount Rushmore, it's a little bit controversial of sorts, but I don't know, we'll see.
But
Mikey,
hey, these are your picks, and you know what? If you're cool with them, that's all that matters.
yeah, we're just having fun with it.
Exactly.
Mikey, your fourth and final selection.
So, so far, I had to dig through the historical archives to get, a better understanding as I did not have the pleasure of growing up seeing these managerial characters, at least the last 3 live. This one, however, he is continuing to be on my television screen in this current era of WWE products. So this I can say from firsthand experience because he is still continuing to do this. And of course, I mean, for me personally, there was no other pick but the advocate of the apocalypse himself, Paul Heyman. Like, come on now. Oh my goodness. Like, here's the thing. I think, and not to say that the three other picks that I had earlier weren't good on the mic, because they were good on the mic. But at least this version of Paul Heyman, and at least the last couple of years, I think what makes Paul Heyman a really, really good manager is the way that he literally is an advocate. He is an advocate type of manager, and he is the mouthpiece for most of, people. And so I think one of the things that Paul Heyman really brings is that when he delivers his promo, it's less of, I'm going to try to make this make sense. It's less of like a theatrical aspect of the way that he's talking, where the language is very flowery and is to get the point across, like from an emotional standpoint. The way that for me, Paul Heyman delivers promos kind of like a verbal surgeon, where when he talks about, or even when he's talking down to, his client's opponents, he is able to choose like the stylistic tone, which is kind of like the venom, and he's able to use his words and his vocabulary to kind of carve them apart, where I guess the equivalent would be, oh, that's a sick burn. Like, he's just he's able to use his vernacular and his words to be able to surgically tear apart or build up his client. Or like I said, it is insane with how, much Paul is able to come up with when it comes to these promos. And every time he speaks, specifically when he's repping, be like this, and he gives us like, this is the future star, I was just like, you know what, Paul? I kind of have to believe you. Now, sometimes you are made to be a liar in some cases, but
Yeah, Curtis Axel. Curtis Axel.
For the most
part, which I thought could have been.
Paul Heyman seems to have his pulse on like the up and comers, and when he speaks about them, he makes it very prophetic, like we're gonna tell for the future. And then, of course, what can I say? Paul Heyman knows the emotional range. It's like his over the topness makes me believe him, whether he's scared, he is, selling the desperation, the arrogance, all that good stuff. And I think what also gives Heyman a little bit of a bonus too is not only on screen is he's the manager, but he has had a hand in shaping some of the eras that we look at, as the timeline of professional wrestling, specifically for WWE and WWF too, and ECW and all that stuff. He's had a hand in some of that as well. So I think Paul Heyman, to me, is, at least because he is still going with it, I think Paul Heyman is on my Mount Rushmore because he's very, very good at what he does.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything you hate to use the like King Midas example, but like everything he says and touches, like it gets you interested. Like this is not a prediction, it's a spoiler. Like everything, the way he is so eloquent with his words, the way that he's able to articulate why you need to watch whoever he's representing in whatever match is coming, is the definition again of just talking me into the building, selling me on your match, your person, and moving there. And then again, like he came in and instantly, like, say what you will, everything he did with elevating Lesnar, who couldn't talk, to save his life for years, and putting him over. Then he had that run, which I thought was a great transition for him, with Big Show, right? Like, who's again another guy. He talked. Big Show got better as it went on, but he still wasn't, a great talker. And everything he did. Then they started trying throwing him with mid card people like Curtis Axel, like Cesaro, and I thought he was helping to get people over. They just didn't get over the hump to main event status, which maybe some of those guys would have never got there anyway. Say what you will about Cesaro, but and now where he's at with the vision and being able to elevate these young talents. So like, yeah, just over generations. How many different generations has he been able to do this? How many years? And with so many different talents to just be able to keep you interested in the match. Yeah, no, I agree. I think Heyman and Heenan for me were the two that you have to put on.
Right.
You know, any sort of Mount Rushmore. This is the chat is pretty unanimous on this one. The chat's at 100% with Heyman and rather on this one. The question is, I guess, you know, as I tee up my last one here, but and we tee up the phone lines, you know, how much longer is he going to go? And like, how many more clients does he go with?
I don't know, man. I mean, honestly, Paul Heyman can do whatever he wants. I hope that he gets to stick around at least for the next 3-4 years, at least if he's going to be an on-screen character. Hopefully, you know, whatever faith-based thing you subscribe to, I say Lord willing, because who knows? Because nobody is promised tomorrow. But I would be interested to see if Paul Heyman is still here in the next 3 or 4 years. I'm just imagining if they would ever put him with somebody like an Obafemi, or you know, or you know, I'm looking at the current NXT roster we have too, and I was just like, yeah, I'm very interested to see where Paul Heyman goes with this.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind him just splitting from all the people in the division and like having a whole new client. Like an
That's what he kind of does half the time anyways. It's just like, oh, we're with someone new now. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's what a good advocate should do. Find a better client and move on.
Be like, all right, who am I gonna get 2 or 3 years out of? All right, let's do this.
Yeah. Basic. Yeah. Exactly. Like patch it together.
For real.
So for my last one here, I want to go a little different from you. Not mentioned in your list, but again, equally important. I know the last one, Jim Cornette, was a little bit controversial to some extent. The next one, I think, might be a little more viable, and I said I associate him just because of the fact when you talk about Yokozuna and the success Yokozuna had, Mr. Fuji. How do you not include Mr. Fuji as a potential candidate or a Mount Rushmore of managers? And then you talk about, obviously, Demolition, which you could argue, New Day, say what you will, one of the most successful tag teams in WWE history, right? Longest reigning in the early going for a long time. So to me, and again, like I remember, what was it? The Bret Hart with like the is it considered chalk, or what's the dust that Mr. Fuji threw? What's that considered? I don't know. But like he really introduced that whole concept of like blinding the competitors, right, like to try and steal a victory to our audience. And then obviously with his cane, so just again, maybe there was more heelish managers at the time, but like he was one of the top, if not the top heelish manager, next to like Heenan, early 90s. He's got to be up there. Mr. Fuji to me. I don't know. Do you have any memories of Mr. Fuji?
So I think Mr. Fuji is really important. Like, so I'm going to put it this way. I'm going to put a blanket statement. I'm going to put a disclaimer out here. I am only speaking from a wrestling perspective. So please, I don't claim to know the plight and the lives of, talent from, the Japan and the Asian countries, but bear with me. So I think Mr. Fuji is important too, because around this time, and not to bring real world stuff into it too, but Mr. Fuji was one of the few like either Asian and Pacific Islander talent that would be on television. Now, granted, he was in a managerial role, and because he introduced the powder or the salt, as some people are saying, I think Mr. Fuji is important too, because it's, again, the way that BC WrestlePod covers wrestling is we talk about it, but we also try to come from it as a lens of like what is going on in the world, or the origin point and all of this. And honestly, Mr. Fuji, I think, was one of the first real representations that led to more, Japanese talent be able to come on over. Now, there was a spell where the Japanese talent didn't get treated very well in WWE as we headed into the 90s and the early 2000s. But I think once, I don't want to say got over, but once people, for the most part, certain people, not everybody, learned better of how to treat the talent of those origins, I think it also kind of laid the groundwork for people to come in like a Tajiri. And then, even in the 2000s, we had a Yoshitatsu. And then now we look at the roster across all three brands of WWE: Asuka, Kairi, Julia, Tozawa. um,
Mm,
you have so many talent, and then not even just from Japan. You also had, like, even though she's no longer part of the company, you had Xia Li from China. You had there's just now there's more of people being aware of these characters and of that culture too. So I think Mr. Fuji kind of was, I don't want to say he was the origin point, but it definitely started the conversation of, more visibility when it came to Asian and Pacific Islander talent being in
mm.
wrestling programming on screen. So that's just me though.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like, again, like that's why we did like the different backgrounds. Like, what was the climate in the backstage then? Like, there's a lot of different things that have happened over the years. Like, again, like a guy like Great Muta, if he came to WWE in the '90s and like today, more specific today, how differently would he have been booked? Right? Like, you look at a guy like Okada in AEW getting booked completely different, right? Versus
Mhm.
what the '90s example was. So yeah, I mean, and you need pioneers like Mr. Fuji that will be able to do that, like, through those barriers for people.
Right, and I know some of the talent still leans into those caricatures a little bit too. Like, then recently we've seen like Kyrie and Asuka kind of lean more into that angry Japanese caricature that we kind of
Mm,
see or we have seen in history. And honestly, I wish that was a choice that WWE didn't make too often, but I do think that compared to where we started to where we are now, while not everything is 100% perfect, I do like that there is more diversity when it comes to the talent that is being presented. And again, sometimes it's a
mm,
character choice that they're either told to do or they lean to it. Like, I look at Okada and the way that he acts in AEW. I know, and so he leans into that more Japanese comedic style of things. And he's gone on record saying, it's like in New Japan, he was the Rainmaker. He was one of the poster boys and he didn't get to really be funny. So now he's being more of a funny, heel Japanese comedic champion, and it's working for him. And sometimes
mm.
that's a choice that these wrestlers make. I'm just really happy that we have more choices and more diversity and more ability to see different styles of Japanese characters and just actually worldly characters, if you want to think about it, now that everybody's all over the place in wrestling. So
Yeah, no, fair. Yeah, good point. Well, Mikey, we will open up the phone lines before we do that. So feel free to call in. The call-in link is pinned in the chat. Let us know who's your top four, who made your Mount Rushmore. But as we do that, as the lines warm up or heat up, as we like to say, honorable mention. Give me one, Mikey.
So, of course, one of my honorable mentions was one of your picks, which, of course, was the lovely, sensational Sherry. And I know we talked about her earlier, but my other honorable mention is Miss Elizabeth. Yes, she was mostly more of a valet more than a manager, but I do believe that even with that, she kind of provided the emotional gravity, especially when it came to uh, being with Macho Man. So, and you know what? I liked it. It was, I know she was seen more as a valet than an actual manager, but hey, it definitely worked because the crowd cheered when she and Macho Man, like, on TV in character, got back together, like, because they were apart, and then they got back together, and the crowd lost their absolute mind. I'm like, stop. And sometimes that's all
Yeah,
you need.
yeah, no, it's true. I think for me, I guess I think we still like to me. I think if I like really took the four, I think Jimmy Hart would have been like on the fringe for me because he
Right.
managed so many people, but he like oh, it was always like, did they just throw him with like how much do you get like diluted, so to speak, with some of your talent, and just felt like it was noise at some point in time. So to me, that was kind of honorable mention. It's like, yeah, like he was always there though. Like you always associated him with everybody. Like
Right.
you think,
And
oh, that's
and
another
again,
Jimmy Hart.
And when we talk about managers that are over the top too, again, because we don't really see too many managers now, I think Stokely at AEW is doing a heck of a job because that man is over the top. He's fun. The way he cuts promos is great. And you know what? The crowd is behind. Listen, within the last year and a half, that man has gave us some of the best memes and saying that
Mm.
professional that we can say in professional wrestling. Like, I mean, come on now. When you get the whole crowd and the actual wrestlers to break character for the crowd repeating a line that was used against him. Like he's short, he's bald, and he gets no O's. Like, come on now.
Yeah,
It's like
that's true.
Stokely, you're doing great work. We love you, Stoke.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Good point. Good point. All right, let's open up the phone lines. Let's bring in our buddy from overseas. Let's hear who he's got as his top four. Reese.
Evening.
What's going on, Reese?
It depends on how you ask the question.
Well, who is your top four? We want to know.
Well, Bobby's number one. But no doubt about it, he's the greatest manager that ever lived, God rest his soul. It'll always be Bobby the Brain. And he knew about Hogan before anybody. If only he lived to outlast Hogan. Little dark joke, but hey ho. So yeah, Bobby for me will always be number one, especially for the Rick Rude and the establishment of the Brainbusters and Kurt Hennig. Not to mention getting Haku to turn on Andre was perfect. But also, he got King Kong. He got King Kong Bundy a Mania main event. And Big John Studd.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Yeah. Yeah, King Kong. Yeah, King Kong. Yeah, he was with at that point in time.
He certainly was. He certainly was. Number two, I'm going with Sherry. I've always been a big fan of sensational Sherry. I just think she's the definition of what women's wrestling in terms of like proper representation is all about. Unlike Fabulous Moolah, or as I call her, bitch face. The one true representation for women is sensational Sherry, 100% for me. Because she knew how to elevate people properly, and it was never about ego. It was business being business.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and it was never well, I guess she was the voice in Shawn Michaels' theme, but it was never like sexual.
Yeah,
it wasn't like
that's what Sherry was.
Yeah, like she wasn't trying to rail for Michaels.
Sherry was, what's the best way to put it? She was professional sexy, if that makes sense. Like she made it professional sexy. Yes.
Sexy. Oh.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go with it.
Like she made.
Mikey's nodding his head and going with it. So if Mikey goes with it, I'll go with it.
That's because Mikey gets what I'm saying.
Because Mikey is the sex master when he comes on all of our shows.
Stop!
He's stop blushing, Mike.
But what I mean by that is she makes like her appeal in that way. It's professional, but she doesn't lose her allure. She doesn't lose her star power. She doesn't lose her unique quality. Like she just is it. That's Sherry. That's Sherry.
Yeah, it's one of those things where she knows she has it, but there's the intelligence behind it. She's like, yeah, I got it, but I also know how to make some decisions around here too. So
Absolutely.
Who's your three?
Number three, to be fair, you've already said him. Yes, personally, he's an amplified word begin with R, ends in T, but definitely Jim Cornette. As a manager, like he's failed to not elevate anybody in his career. storyline wise, he was just absolutely perfect. He broke his knees for the business as well in that ridiculous scaffold match in 1989. But this is a guy who is traditional, and I mean, you do want to punch the Pee Wee Herman look-alike, but that's because he's such a great heel manager and he knew what he was doing. Like, there's just, and to be fair, he wanted to fight Brock Lesnar, so that's automatic.
Yeah.
But but I just liked what he was like in the old NWA, like late 80s and late 80s of the old NWA, and then I liked his run in WCW alongside Jim Ross, and then I liked that fast forward several years later, but it was his run with Camp Cornette for me that sealed it. Like, it was just absolutely brilliant. Not to mention, there's a spot that Cornette once did that I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it was on Monday Night Raw. And it was The Undertaker versus The Goon. There's a little throwback for you. The Goon. And The Goon gets squashed.
Oh, the Goon.
Aye, The Goon. And then all you hear is Cornette berating him, saying he's going to absolutely murder him at the Royal Rumble, and then lights go out and Cornette gets 2 choke slams and a tombstone. But he just drags him. It's just perfect.
He just
And
was a
then-
definition of like just an annoying voice, and that like for a heel man, that's what you want. And like again, shout out to one of the guys, SP Anderson for TCW as a manager. There, he's got a couple different clients in TCW, and he comes out with a megaphone. And I talked to him about it. It's like he's like, yeah, it's a homage to Jimmy Hart. That's why I do it. And like he literally he doesn't wrestle, he just manages, and he's got a jacket that's very similar. It's great. But yeah, I digress.
Nice.
Nikki knows. Nikki already knows.
Nice.
But anyway.
So Heenan, Sherry, Cornette. Do I go with Percy Pringle or do I go with Jimmy Hart? Well, I'm not going with Heyman because he doesn't belong on a Mount Rushmore, in my opinion. Plain and simple, because he said it for years he's not a manager. He doesn't want to be like Bobby Heenan. Therefore, I will not include him. So I will go with you managed Hulk Hogan. Fuck off. I'm going with Paul Bear.
I knew it. I did it up because I knew you couldn't. I knew you couldn't do it.
It's just Hogan's a black mark on anyone's career.
Well, that's what's so crazy. It's like literally I could not get past. That was why like I went upstairs and like I was going through the list, and then I was like, I forgot about Jimmy Hart. And then I was like, I couldn't put him on because of Hogan. And I was like, I just think of Hogan. And then Nikki's like, yeah, but like who didn't he manage? And they're like, yeah. And then I was like, natural disasters. And I'm like, yeah, he fucking managed everybody. But yeah. I just couldn't get past the last 15 years. Like that's all he's been associated with. But no, I like so why do you like Bear? I'll go back to it.
I like Bear just because of the character work. And it was actually he used his real life qualification as a job, as a manager. Like I like the realism behind it. So but it wasn't the work with Taker that made me like Bear. It was Mankind. That for me, I'm gonna say it is his best work. For me, 96, 97 Mankind is his best work.
And then he brings in Kane, and like I'll admittedly didn't watch, like I watched some of it, but wasn't into it wrestling as much, but got back into it when the Kane storyline really started heating up. I was getting back into wrestling, and like to me, yeah, like that was the definition of like Bearer, like, I forget. I think it was Andrew Brunswick put that in the chat. Like, he sold that storyline and just like he was a foil to the Undertaker, and like that's the idea of like eventually when you move on from that guy, that you become the foil and you elevate somebody else, and he elevated two other people because of it. Like literally, Glenn Jacobs, DDS. Like literally, you're the mayor of what's it, Kansas? Somewhere in Kansas. No, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Some shithole, yeah.
Thanks to Paul Bearer.
7 years, 4 months over 4 separate spells, managing the Undertaker. There you go.
That's crazy.
Statistician.
Fair enough. Reese, before we let you get out of here, any last words on Mount Rushmore or honorable mentions? Tough decision.
An honorable mention is China. Deuces.
Ooh, interesting. Mikey, thoughts? China. I didn't think about that. It's an interesting, like, little wrenchy.
So to me, I feel like China, at least, you know what? I could see her, we could consider her a manager. I always considered her more of an enforcer. But then again, those two things kind of bleed together a little bit. So I could see it. I do like China. As problematic as everything is surrounding that whole situation. I do like China, and I do think she was pretty good. So yeah, I would consider her a manager.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's interesting. Like outside the box thought. We had him, and they dropped the unbelievable. This guy.
No.
Yeah. All right, he's back on. Let's bring him in. Steven.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening,
sir.
Yes, happy Mardi Gras.
Is it Mardi Gras?
Tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow it is.
Tomorrow. Well, I mean, if you're a New Orleans native, it's been Mardi Gras for like the last 3 weeks.
True.
or if you're just visiting, it's Mardi Gras all year round.
Yeah, but tomorrow's the day.
Fair enough. Steven, what are you thinking here? Who's your Mount Rushmore?
Well, I'm not going to disagree with Heenan. Heenan would be my number one. I think he's a lot of people's number one. So no disagreement there. The rest I wouldn't necessarily rank. I'm not going to disagree with Heyman either. He's probably the best today. There's not that many managers anymore, but he's certainly a big placeholder there.
That's a good comment in and of itself, Stephen. Like, yeah, like who is like right now, like besides him, who are the managers? I'm like Zelina Vega.
Well, I'll give you two who one was definitely a mentor to Heyman, and the other one could have been. I'm not sure that he was. The one who, I'm not certain that he was, but he was certainly around when Heyman started, trying to get backstage with his Polaroid, trying to take pictures. When a lot of people my age, and I am of a certain age, more so than anybody else in the room. Sorry, folks. I'm old. Sorry. There were really only two managers. Heenan was, I think, just finishing up with AWA. Hart was still in the territories, et cetera, et cetera. But there were really only two managers of note. Freddie Blassie, he's not the guy I'm referring to, and Captain Lou Albano. Captain Lou Albano was the main manager when the whole rock and wrestling period first began. Heenan came in. There he is. Heenan came by a little bit later. I think Heenan was featured in the cartoon that came to be in maybe one episode, but Albano was a regular player in that. And yeah, he was the face. He was the guy who was associated with Cyndi Lauper and helped bring all that mainstream attention. He was the guy that had the gold record smashed over his head in the garden. He managed a lot of people.
Girls just want to have fun, Steven.
Yes, as you should. I mean, he was even over enough to the point that he and Blassie had a feud, and they actually wrestled each other, and they actually had steel cage matches against each other back in the day at unfortunately non-televised house shows, but they were advertised. I remember seeing those ads for the old Nassau Coliseum. And so Captain Lou would be on my Mount Rushmore. And before that, the one who absolutely was Heyman's mentor, and Heyman has said so himself, going back to even before I was a wrestling fan, is Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard.
Mm.
I mean, he managed, who didn't he manage? Pat Patterson, Blackjack Mulligan, Don Morocco, the Big Cat, Ernie Ladd. Oh my God, just so Superstar Graham. I'm just doing this all off the top of my head. Ken Patera, so many, and I think he was so influential for people, for the managers that came after him down the line.
Didn't he have Hulk Hogan?
Did he manage Hulk Hogan? I want to say very brief. No, Blassie did.
Okay, so Grand Wizard. So here's what
Blassie managed
Superstar Billy Graham, Sergeant Slaughter, Iron Sheik, Don Morocco, as you mentioned, Ken Patera, Killer Kowalski, yes. You mentioned Ernie Ladd, Valiant Brothers, and Mr. Fuji. There we go. Another legendary man.
I think a lot of them and a lot of the managers that came after him took a lot of influence from the Grand Wizard, and to a lesser degree Captain Lou. But the Grand Wizard, Ernie Roth, would be on my Mount Rushmore, and that's my Mount Rushmore.
Fair enough, Stephen. Well done. Well, Steve, we'll send you off back to Mardi Gras. You go.
Laissez le bon temps rouler, everybody.
Bye, Steven.
I don't know what that means. He said he spoke a language. I think it was French.
It is French.
You know, Steven.
Mardi Gras is very French. Voulez-vous français, no?
Well, Mikey, this has been a fun one.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Again, as somebody who has been watching wrestling still under the double digits, like wholeheartedly, it was really fun to dig back into the historical archives of professional wrestling to come up with this list. I really, really enjoyed this one. And as always, I appreciate you having me on and, allowing me to be here. This was a fun one.
It's always fun when I get to chat it up wrestling with you and do some fun legendary stuff, because this incorporates all different generations. Because again, you may not watch Raw religiously or SmackDown, whatever, but you probably watched it in the 80s, 90s, or aughts, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember managers, or I remember tag teams, whatever it is. So this is a perfect one to bring in on. So always a pleasure cross promoting and doing stuff with you. So speaking of cross promotion, tell everybody where they can find your awesome stuff.
Oh, sure, most certainly. Thank you. So, of course, my name is Mikey. My moniker is El Jefe of BC WrestlePod. I manage a group of 15 individuals that span all different ages, backgrounds, time zones. Including time zones is going to be an interesting one because someone's going international for a little bit here soon. But you can find all of our stuff at BC WrestlePod. We do post-show breakdowns on a weekly basis, and as well as the international stuff. So, like this week, tomorrow night is AEW. Wednesday is NXT and CMLL. Thursday is Progress Wrestling, as they just had a show this past weekend. Friday is the TNA pay-per-view, but in terms of like big crossover promotion, next Saturday, February 28th, BC WrestlePod will be hosting a Worlds Collide Watch along for WWE's Elimination Chamber, where of course you'll probably see Nick pop into a match or two. And we will also be having our other friends over if we had the Pencil podcast. Matt and Sean will also be there as well. So I am hosting everybody there. So I'm excited to see everyone there. So I'm looking forward to this. Like I've been wanting more wrestling friends to do stuff with, and it's been very nice to have this group of a trifecta, the 3-ring circus, if you will.
That's
of
what it's all
of us
about.
together.
Building community and having fun with friends. So, and shooting the shit about wrestling. So I'm super excited for that. That's gonna be fun. Watch along next week. Elimination Chamber. And then Mikey, we have to work out the specifics because we have to talk to our new friends over there if we have the pencil. And then our buddy Reese. Reese, I know you're still in the chat here. So we got to talk about Podmania 2026 going international.
As I know, as BC WrestlePod calls it, WrestleMania Hell Week will be upon us.
It's gonna be a blast. I'm super excited. Well, Mikey, it's been a pleasure having you.
I
Until
appreciate
next
you
time.
letting me be here. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mikey. Be sure to check out his stuff. Always, again, BC WrestlePod. Always producing awesome stuff. WWE, TNA, AEW. I don't know if they do New Japan. They're doing a bunch of different. CMLL is definitely what they're doing. Reese is doing New Japan. So, again, you got it all covered. All covered on the show. I don't think that. Too much of my face. So we're doing a lot. We're covering a lot. But again, this has been a fun one. This is a standalone show we're trying to throw out there it might be bi-weekly, it might be once a month. Depends when the mood strikes. But this is Mount Rushmore Mondays. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure you smash the old like, subscribe if you haven't yet, on your way out. Thank you again for joining me for Mount Rushmore Monday.
The lights flash, bodies colliding in a thunder crash. Who's your hero? Who's your king? Who's the one that makes you swing? 4 faces carved in stone, the legends that we all own. Power slams and flying knees. Who brings the crowd down to its knees?